Hey guys, Table here. Today we got something a little different for you. I got a kind of off the beaten path commander build idea for you here. We're gonna run Tyrwhitt, good old Reggie on the Fiji today. But first off, here's my typical Fraser build. The main drawback here that we're giving up is the combine between perk slot 1 and perk slot 3. If we had perk slot 3 max, it would be a 10% increase at AP penetration. So we still have the same influence from Yamamoto. He's an inspiration on both builds, but there's a 10% penetration drop off basically when we give up Fraser's build that's really AP focused. What we're getting though, slot 1, not that big of a deal. I mean, it doesn't hurt. We do have torps, but it's a torp perk, helps the torp reload and speed. So not something we're going to scoff at. The penalty is destroyer specific, so that's not an issue here. Slot 2, though, that's where things get really interesting. 6% reduction in detectability. You combine that with Makawa. At my level, I got 5.1%. So that's 11, right? Yeah, 11.1 reduction in detectability. We could technically put Swirsky on there for a triple concealment build. God knows what it would be. But my build already with Fraser, who again has Macau on there, 9.5 kilometer detection on that one, 8.9 on this build, which is god tier. There's nothing at the tier on my builds, how I have them set up, that can touch it. Closest one is Atago, Magami. I think one of them is 9.7, the other one's 9.8. Can't remember which one. So almost a kilometer better than those, and those are known as extremely stealthy ships. Slot 3, this is where it gets kind of interesting as well. I think on PC this perk is called Adrenaline Rush, or a perk that's similar to it. Basically, when you have it maxed, which would be Legendary 3, level 14, it reduces the reload time of all armaments by 0.2% per HP percentage loss. So at 10%, you'll have, or I'm sorry, at 50% health loss, you'll have a 10% reload reduction. And this is torpedoes, this is main guns, whatever, secondaries presumably if you have them. And nearly a 20% reduction when you're getting extremely low health. So imagine a situation where you get rocked, you got 1,000 health left, but you got smokes. And look at these, we'll take a look at slot 4 in the legendary for the smokes. But you can get those smokes deployed, start firing those guns, and you'll just be pumping out the damage, pumping out the torps. So very interesting build. Again, the massive drawback here is we're losing AP pen, which we'll see in the game is an issue. Slot 4, though, we got a smoke perk, dispersion, deployment, enhancements, and then legendary. We get 2 extra charges. That'll give you 4 charges on this build. Faster cycle. You can see as the further you get along there, the quicker those charges will cycle through, but reduction in the deployment time. So very interesting build. So in the background here, we're going to have a game in Estuary. I played this build twice, once in the Edinburgh, once in the Fiji. This is the Fiji game, so I might reference the video here and there, but I'm mostly just going to be talking about off the beaten path builds in general as a design philosophy of the game. But to start with, basically the game, how almost every player I believe is approaching their commander builds are they're looking at, okay, each nation has 2 options per class basically. So take the Japanese cruisers for instance. You have a guy named Makawa, who's what I would quote-unquote call the defensive commander. I don't really like using those terms anymore, but that's how I initially called them, and it's a fairly popularized way to refer to these commanders at this point in time. Yamamoto is the quote-unquote offensive one. Now, you're going to have a little bit of variation nation to nation, but in general, you know, you got your offensive battleship commanders, Sims, Takagi, you know, Cunningham, go down the list, Uncle Jojo, so on and so forth, Galler, whatever. They're all roughly the same commander. They got a little bit of variation here and there, a little bit of national flavor, but you kind of have 2 main options. Then you have this generic Dewey option. You got the American Dewey, you got Deutsche Dewey Shear, you got Francois Dewey, the French guy, do for an A, What I don't have nicknames for all of them, but essentially they're just kind of generic. Those ones tend to work pretty well for destroyers, and then they do all right with cruisers and do fairly poorly with battleships, at least in my opinion. But here we got something where we're running one of the destroyer commanders, for the British Royal Navy on a cruiser build. Why does this work? Number one, concealment, extremely important for Royal Navy cruisers. They don't take kindly to getting shot. Nice concealment helps you get from island to island. It also lets you get into positions where you can ambush ships, especially cruisers, destroyers. You got very fast firing guns, and if you get access to broadsides and kind of ambush situations, that can be very dangerous for those type of ships. You can get rid of them very quickly. So having an excellent concealment, and this is the best concealment I've ever had on these ships, and keep in mind we could even go bigger by throwing Jersey Swirsky on there for a triple concealment build. But that's huge. And then this reload thing, the adrenaline rush, if you want to call it that, extremely valuable as well. Again, if you're nearly out of health, let's say you got 1,000 health left, you got basically, a 20% reduction in your reload time. You're going to be out DPMing everyone. And with these extra smoke charges that you got on this build, that's going to help you protect yourself while getting into a position where you can use that enhanced reload. You can be spitting out torps like a Smith at tier 6, and that can cause a lot of problems very quickly. Again, where are we running into problems here? You can see it on the screen. The 10% worse AP penetration than we have on Fraser, and that's why we're getting these results where we're getting 2 penetrations, 4 shatters, 1 ricochet. Let's see what this one comes in at. 3 and 3, looks like, in 3, if I'm reading that correctly. Fairly small the screen right now for me, but I believe that's it. Whereas my Fraser build, I played an extra game just to verify that I was remembering it correctly, but that one, I was usually getting like 5 or 6 pens, maybe 1 shatter, and maybe 1 over pen or 1 bounce or something like that. So, much more favorable results, and enhancing your DPM by enhancing the reload doesn't really work that well if you've already knocked your DPM down by 50% due to the worst penetration. So this build, against cruisers, destroyers, especially close range, could be quite deadly. And this is, if you're going to come up with these specialized builds, you might want to start thinking about a specialized play style to accommodate them. So you can imagine, let's say, for instance, we threw Swirsky on there. We had a 15% reduction in the detectability. Gets down to, 8.2 or something? 8 kilometers? Now we can sneak up there close range to these ships, get undetected, set up an ambush, pop the cruiser broadside, whittle them down very quickly, pop the destroyer, employ this sort of strategy, and then as our health is gradually reduced over the course of battle, and we might be, even a little casual deploying those smokes, because we want to incur a little bit of damage to increase our reload. Well, that just makes it more and more dangerous the more you get shot at here. So I'm very intrigued by this build, and I'm not going to shelve it completely. I might even wait. I mean, the problem with testing it right now is my slot 3, the Adrenaline Rush perk, is only at 50% capacity. I would need 1 more level legendary, and I would need 2 more go from level 12 to level 14, which is fine, especially if he was going to be my main destroyer commander. He'd already be 14 at this point in time. But he's already close. He's 12, so getting him up to 14, a little bit further down my build implementation isn't going to be that onerous. So, and this is kind of what I'm thinking is the more you get to the point where you've already maxed the lines that you're actually going to be planning on running those commanders mainly, then you're getting into situations where now we're putting promotion orders into commanders strictly for the inspirations, or even, potentially looking at some of these off-the-wall builds and seeing what you can come up with. So, and the Bureau is also going to put pressure on people as well, because let's take Luchins, for instance. If I want to put him on the Bismarck, well, I was not inclined to boost Luchins anyways, but, had I boosted him for the Grober Kerr first, that could have boosted my progress there. I'm sorry, it's too damn good. I can't not say Grover. But, so I mean, my point is, if I want to put Lucians just on the Bismarck as a specialized commander, previous to there being the additional incentive to the Bureau, it would be even harder to justify it. But there's just one more reason now. So we could promote Lucians because we like his inspiration. We think he's be a good Grass B commander, as opposed to Mueller, who we want to leave on the majority of the German line. Now we got Lucians influencing our Bureau progress. So there's more and more reasons as the game's been evolving to level up all these commanders. I would still say, stick to one core commander per line of all the ships that you intend to play. If that's all the ships in the game, you're going to need one battleship commander, one destroyer commander, one cruiser commander per nation. The main points to get to are 11 first, then 14 is kind of what I would call functionally maxed. From there, if you have commanders that you use as inspiration often, like Makawa, you can put some points into him if you just think he's going to be an inspiration. Or if you want to use him as your Japanese cruiser commander, now you have double incentive to put some points into him. The Bureau, though, my advice is to not level up commanders just to save a couple days on your Bureau progress. But I understand a lot of you guys are going to ignore that, or you're just going to think, screw it, I want to get these legendary ships as quick as possible. That means putting some of these promotion orders into these commanders I'm not that inclined to. But then, let's say you didn't want to level up Lucians, but now you got a bunch of points into them anyways, and you start to look at his build. Okay, well, this works on all the ships. This perk just works on cruisers, so that doesn't apply to off-the-wall builds, but this one says ships, or maybe like the perk slot 1 on Reggie. The torpedo reload and the torpedo speed said ship, but then it said there was an HP reduction for your destroyer. Well, for putting it on a cruiser, we get the 2 enhancements, but not the negatives. So you can go through all these commanders that maybe you weren't planning on using, determine what the parameters are first, and again, you look for perks that say ship, or they don't reference the specific class, cruiser, destroyer, battleship. Once you figure out what the build is capable of, you've developed the parameters and expanded your horizons and your thinking by seeing which perks apply to all ships. Then you can design a build, and then once you've designed the build, you can look at the available ships for that nation and say, is this build worth a damn? Like Reggie Tyrwhitt here, he was just sitting around. I had him level 12 anyways, so I thought, let's just check out his build. Okay, we got this adrenaline rush. We got awesome concealment that apply to all ships. What can I do with that? What can I use that for? Sounds pretty decent for British cruisers. Now, this wasn't a barn burner, but it was one of the 2 games I tested it out, so I thought I'd show it to you guys. Hopefully you enjoyed it. If you did, thumbs up, new to the channel, consider subscribing. If this is something you're interested in, let me know in the comments. We can do some more in the future, and peace.